Martin Belmont was about 11 or 12 years old, a kid growing up in England when he asked his parents to buy him a guitar. The first record he got was Jailhouse Rock by Elvis Presley. Around that time, the Shadows out of London were a popular instrumental group. America had the Ventures, England had the Shadows. Young Martin was fascinated by the look and sound of Hank Marvin's Fender Stratocaster. In art school, Martin made friends with other guitarists and musicians, and after leaving school, he moved to London. Through a mutual friend, he met the members of two bands, Help Yourself and Brinsley Schwarz. The Brinsleys were in need of a roadie. Martin played that role for about a year before forming his own band, Deluxe. They signed with RCA, the label Martin's childhood hero Elvis had been on. The next band he co-formed, along with guitarist Brinsley Schwarz and keyboardist Bob Andrews, was the Rumour, best known for backing Graham Parker, with Andrew Bodnar on bass and Steve Goulding on drums. The rest, as they say, is history. Welcome to Frets with DJ Faye, the place to hear great music and interviews with fantastic musicians. Stay tuned.
Hello.
Martin?
Yes. Is it Dave?
It is.
Yes. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good.
Great.
Well, I am calling at the correct time, right?
You're bang on 2:00.
Well, Martin Belmont, thanks so much for taking the time to talk today.
My pleasure.
Well, what part of the UK are you in right now?
I'm in London, in northwest London, an area called Kilburn.
Well, I always like to hear about someone's life when they were growing up. I think you were born in Bromley?
Yes, I was, yeah. Yes, I was born in Bromley, which is southeast London. And we lived in another part of southeast London until I was about 7 or 8, I think. And then we moved to Somerset, which is in the West Country of England. I lived in a little town called Yeovil, and I lived there through school. And then I went to art school in Bournemouth, which is on the south coast, and lived there and moved back to London when I left art school, which was 1970.
Okay. You moved around some.
Well, a little bit, yeah.
Wasn't David Bowie from Bromley?
I think so, yeah. Whether he was from there or not, I don't know. But he certainly has, there is some kind of David Bowie-Bromley connection.
Maybe he went to school there or something. I don't know. I was thinking maybe he was from...
Yeah, I don't know is the answer. Okay. Although I know that there's a sort of David Bowie fan group called the Bromley Connection or something like that. I've seen them on social media things. You know.
So your family moved to Yeovil, pretty far west of London.
Yeah, we moved to Yeovil, lived there, as I say, till I went to art school. This is in the 60s. And I went to art school in 1965 till 1970 when I left. And then I moved back to London. Yeah.
So prior to you going off to art school, while you were living in Yeovil, what music do you remember hearing in those days? I mean, you were pretty young, but
well, that was the 60s.
Yeah.
That was, I mean, when we moved there, it was late 50s, I think, and I'd heard Elvis and the surface of rock and roll, if you like. You know, the Elvis obviously was big, and I loved Elvis. I loved the pre-army Elvis particularly. That was my cup of tea. But then the other big news for me was the English band called the Shadows.
Oh yeah.
Who had a huge effect on a whole generation of people that went on to become musicians.
Yeah, the guitar work from the Shadows was so good.
Guitar work and just seeing somebody with this beautiful machine that's this Fender electric guitar.
Yeah.
It's like quite, a red Fender guitar. It's like like from another planet or something.
Yes.
It's wonderful. And their instrumental hits, they had many of them at the late 50s through to the early 60s. And they were a huge influence.
Yeah.
Huge influence. I started playing when I was about 11 or 12. And the first thing I played was learning the rhythm parts in Shadow songs. And then later on, learned how to play the tunes as well.
Yeah. Apache.
Yeah,
I know
Apache.
they backed Cliff Richard, but yeah, I was much more interested in just listening to their instrumental work. It was great.
Yeah, me too. Cliff Richard was always a very third-rate Elvis Presley as far as, it was a typical English sort of version of an American great thing. The English version was kind of very much a second-hand, low-rent version, and until the Beatles came along. But up until then, it was all the good stuff came from America, apart from the Shadows.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned like learning the rhythm and then ultimately more of the melody or the lead. So were you self-taught, or did you have friends that played, or did you just learn it on your own?
No, I was self-taught. I bought a book. How to play the guitar. I bought the book that was sold millions called Play Guitar in a Day, which is how to sell millions with a lie. You can't learn to play the guitar in a day. Well, define play the guitar, If you mean strum one chord, yes, okay. But anyway, that's what I did. I just picked it up. The thing about the guitar is that when you see people playing it, it looks pretty easy. It doesn't look terribly complicated like a piano or something. Right. And when you get the reality in your hands, and it hurts your fingers of your left hand holding down these strings. If, like me, you went to the guitar with great enthusiasm, but then found that it hurt, and you put it down, and it took about a year to get over the first hurdle, and then you start to find your way a bit, and it gets better. But yeah, I can remember the enthusiasm and then the big damper of, oh, this is not quite as easy as it looks. And the guitar is relatively a simple instrument to play compared with many other instruments.
I think we all went through that, though. I certainly did. I had to build up calluses, and I was like, oh wow, long before before figuring out that I could get lighter gauge strings and things like that. But I was determined, and I'm sure, and I know you were too. So.
Well, I reckon probably for every person that played a guitar and stuck with it, there were probably, at least 10 people who didn't stick with it. And,
right.
Because it comes as a shock when you think it's going to be one thing and it turns out to be something else. It comes as a bit of a downer, doesn't it?
So you learn to play guitar, and that's in your days in Yeovil. You did go off to art school.
Yeah.
And then there, I'm sure while you were there, you were meeting other guys that were playing, or other people who were playing guitar and bands and stuff.
Art schools, English art schools were, in those days, were an absolute breeding ground for musicians. You only have to look at the list of well-known musicians who went to art school. You've got John Lennon, right? You've got Pete Townsend. You've got, Keith Richards, I think. All these people. And the reason, or one of the reasons why that was so, is that when it came time to leave school, regular school, 15, 16, you would either stay on and do A-levels and then hopefully go to university, or you would leave school and get a job. And if you didn't want to do either of those two options, the other option that was open to you was to go to art school, which you didn't need any A-levels for. And in fact, you didn't even have to be particularly artistic. You just had to say you were. And they were easy to get into. And you got a grant from your local council to attend these places. And it was full of people playing guitar. There was folk music was really big. Lots of people playing blues stuff. Lots of people with acoustic guitars, including me. And so, art schools were a great breeding ground for musicians in that day and age. It's sort of changed now, of course, but yeah.
Well, then you headed back to London after art school. At what point did you cross paths with the guys in Brinsley Schwarz? How did that all come about?
Well, what happened was when I moved up to London, I was friends with a guy who'd been at art school with me in Bournemouth, and he'd moved up a year before me, and he had a little flat, and I used to stay in his. It wasn't really a flat; it was just a one-room kind of thing. And I used to sleep on his floor, and he told me that he was a photographer, and he'd photographed some bands that were associated with this guy called Dave Robinson, who was the manager. And one of these bands was the Brinsley Schwarz band, who I'd never heard of. I didn't know any of these people. But Chris, that's the photographer, he told me that they were looking for a roadie if I was interested. And he gave me their address. And that's kind of how I met them.
Nice.
I became their roadie.
That had to be a very interesting time.
Well, it was an interesting time. Yeah, it was 1971, I guess. And I'd got a straight job. I couldn't get a job in the area that I wanted to work in, which was film. And it was fairly obvious that having been to art school gave me no advantage in getting a job at all. In fact, it was an irrelevance, as it turned out. And that's fine. But so my sort of aim drifted from film to music. Because that was the only other thing that I had any interest in at all that could possibly be a source of income.
Sure.
And so I just figured maybe I should go see these people about being a roadie. And I didn't really know what a roadie did, but I did. I went and saw these people, and the next thing I knew, I was traveling to Glasgow, driving a van.
That's like 800 miles away or something, isn't it?
400 there and 400 back. And it was a one-off. It was there and back on the same, just for one gig.
Okay, so a round trip of 800.
Which came as a shock to me. I didn't think people did such a bizarre thing as driving to Glasgow, doing a show, and then driving back.
Wow.
That's not what your popular conception of, but that's a working band, Yeah, so that's how I met them.
Hey, I want to talk about Plug. Plug makes it easy for you to purchase the personal technology you need at 40 to 70% off retail pricing. What can you get from Plug? Certified pre-owned devices including iPhones, Androids, AirPods, Macs, smartwatches, accessories, and more. I originally didn't even want an Apple Watch, but I got one from Plug and I love it. I wear it every day. Your purchase is backed by their unmatched 1-year warranty and 30-day money-back guarantee. One more very cool thing, Plug is dedicated to helping reduce e-waste around the globe. To date, Plug has helped save over 1 million devices from reaching landfills, and they're looking to double that number by 2025. Link to Plug Tech from the show notes, and check out all the great deals and savings on certified pre-owned devices. Plug Electronics. Check it out. Well, I loved all the 60s psychedelia and the very blues-drenched heavy bands like the Yardbirds and Led Zeppelin and Cream. But I really loved that in that same period, Brinsley Schwarz, Nick Lowe, Bob Andrews, those guys were all very into country, and they were very impressed by American bands like Eggs Over Easy, who were they're more like Americana roots rock than some.
Yeah, what today is called Americana. Absolutely, yeah.
Because so many of the bands, which were great. I mean, in that period though, were playing like Baroque pop or really heavy blues stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just find it so cool, and I think that was one thing that really.
And the biggest influence on Brinsleys and all of those people was the band.
Oh yes.
That was the catalyst. In the midst of all the psychedelic madness that was going on, suddenly these people are playing this sort of stripped down, wonderful music that's sort of timeless and universal as well. Yeah.
Well, that reminds me. That reminds me of
I didn't know the band. I didn't know the band until I met up with the Brinsleys.
They were so great.
That was a revelation.
So great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I remember talking with Brinsley, now that you mention it, now I'm remembering that there was a time when they ended up borrowing some equipment from the band for one of the gigs.
No, the band ended up borrowing their equipment.
Oh, the other way around. That's right. That's right.
Just to rehearse.
That's right. That's right.
They were playing at Wembley Stadium with Crosby, Stills and Nash.
That's right.
They came and rehearsed at the Brinsleys. Brinsleys had a house just on the outskirts of London where they had a barn, and they would rehearse in it.
That's right. Well, while you were touring on the road and spending time with Brinsley Schwarz, you met Sean Tyla. How long was it before you guys decided to start your own band?
Well, my memory of the time period is kind of hazy, but during 1971, I met Sean at some point during that time. I met him through a guy called Guy Davis, who was the Brinsleys publicist at the time, and he went on to become Deluxe's manager. And he'd met Sean. Sean was connected to a band called Help Yourself, who were at one time were part of the same stable as the Brinsleys. And so there was a connection there. And I met Sean through Guy. And he was a guy who wrote and sang songs and was looking to be in a band. And I was a guy who played the guitar, and I was looking to be in a band. So we kind of hit it off. And over the course of that year, or several months of that year, Dux Deluxe kind of started in 72. That came together in 72, yes. I'm just saying it's a bit hazy, my recollection of how the timeline played out. But anyway, that's how it happened.
Okay. Well, right here in this room, I still have my slightly worn Dux Deluxe, the first album, the self-titled album.
The first album, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's so great.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's aged quite well, I think.
I think so, yeah.
You know, it's fairly furious.
You guys were living in a big home in London where you could practice, and am I right that
we lived in a squat, what was called a squat, which was a place where you lived and didn't pay a rent or anything.
Nice.
We had electricity and water, and we didn't pay for any of it. It was a thing that was kind of prevalent in those times. There were lots of empty properties, and they were kind of properties that today, having been done up, are sold for millions. But at the time, they were kind of dilapidated and run down. And we met this bass player who'd also been in that band I mentioned called Help Yourself, a guy called Ken Whaley, who was first. And he was already living in this squat with a couple of girls. And so me and Sean moved in with him. Then we acquired a drummer. And within this, it was a 3-story house. And so we had a room to rehearse in, and our own bedrooms and a kitchen and whatever. So it was a great way to start a band, because there was no expenses. So the fact that we weren't making any money
wasn't a problem.
Okay. Wasn't a problem. No, right. Exactly.
Oh, Ken Whaley he played in Man for a while too, didn't he?
That's right. Yes, he was in Help Yourself. Then he was in Man, and he played on and off. And I used to see him many years later. He always lived in that part of London, Islington, that part, which is where the Hope and Anchor was, which was one of the pub rock venues, and quite an important location in my history, as well as many other people.
So you guys were playing gigs around London, and then didn't you do like a weekly or twice weekly show at the Tally Ho?
We didn't do a twice weekly show. We did a week. We had a residency there.
Okay.
And that was where the Brinsleys had seen this band called Eggs Over Easy,
right?
This American band who they had a Sunday lunchtime residency at the Tally Ho, and they were a complete eye opener for a lot of us who saw them, because they would do anything. They played. We were always very careful about what we played, make sure it was okay. It was not, it was not uncool to play. And the Eggs Over Easy took the opposite thing. They would play anything. They'd play an Otis Redding song, followed by a Hank Williams song, followed by a Rolling Stones song.
I love
It made
that.
no difference. They had followed by one of their own songs, So that was a real eye opener for a lot of people in the Brinsleys and in Deluxe as well.
Well, this may be a silly question because I would think there'd be many memorable shows, but from that time period, do you remember like any really memorable gigs or anything that stood out, like some event that happened?
Well,
Good or
not
bad?
really. Not really. I mean, I can remember various gigs for various reasons, but the Deluxe were kind of inconsistent live. We could be really good, and then we could be really bad as well on stage. At least that's my memory of it. Now, I'm sure people that saw us play at the time thought it was great, but my memory is kind of mixed. We had various inconsistencies, but we started in '72. In fact, I told you I was looking through photos on my computer, and while I was digging out photos of Andrew Bodnar, I found a photo of the very first Deluxe gig, which was in the backyard of the house where we squatted, where we were living.
Wow.
And it was just a sort of like a little hippie group of people. We didn't have a drummer, but somebody took a picture of this nascent to-be band. We didn't have a name at that point, and it was before we even had it was me and Sean and Ken Whaley and a couple of local people just jamming along. And I was remarkable that I managed to hang on to that picture.
Yeah, that's great that still exists. That's great.
Absolutely, yeah.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hey, Dave, how long have you been a Euclid Records customer?
Believe it or not, about 30 years.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I used to go there in the late 90s.
That's amazing. Well, you know what? 2026 is our 45th anniversary in St. Louis, and our New Orleans store is turning 15.
The NOLA store is cool, but the St. Louis store has 2 floors of used and new vinyl and CDs.
And every genre you can think of. You can shop in the store 7 days a week or on the website 24/7. We have our own shipping department, so anything you buy from us is lovingly mailed out by us.
When I buy from the website, I use the free local pickup option.
Yes, and we've also done some special orders for you. We do whatever it takes to get music in your hands. One thing, though, that you haven't done with us is sell your collection. We're always buying vinyl and CDs and cassettes for cash or trade. We even travel to someone who has over 1,000 titles in their collection.
So how does one partake in the Euclid Records experience?
Well, our St. Louis store is at 19 North Court Avenue in Webster Groves. You can check out our website, euclidrecords.com, every day to see the latest new and used arrivals, plus events. We share that on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook as well. And remember, we ship worldwide, so no matter where a Frets listener is, there's Euclid Records.
Right, this is Martin Belmont, and you're listening to Frets with DJ Fay.
Well, before too long, the band signed with RCA. What did that feel like, being on this label?
Well, that was great, being on Elvis Presley's label.
Yeah, to say your childhood hero.
I know, yeah, and David Bowie's label,
Right.
and And that was the connection, was because Guy had been David Bowie's publicist as well as the Brinsleys. And so he had connections at RCA Records. And at that point, it was weird because, unlike today, if you could play live and had some half-decent material, you could get yourself a record contract. And we did. Well, Guy did the business, but we got signed to a 2-album deal with RCA, I think, or a 2-year deal, whatever it was. And, got a little advance, and were able to get some better equipment and get a good van and went off to play gigs. And we did a European tour opening for Lou Reed, who was another signed to RCA at that time, which was a sort of mixed blessing, opening for Lou Reed, but it was...
Enough said. I know what you mean.
I can remember a couple of Lou Reed gigs that we did at that time, and I can remember them because there was some, he was a very irascible sort of person.
Yes,
and the thing he had the least concern for was the support band.
Right.
Not surprisingly, I guess, but we would hang around waiting, hoping to get time to do our own sound check while he went on and on and on doing his, or not turning up when his band were there, and he was not there, waiting for him to turn up. Weird times.
Yeah.
That was 73, I think that would have been. Yeah, we obviously had we'd either recorded our album or it had been released. I guess it had probably been released when we did that tour. Yeah.
Well, Ducks Deluxe released some great records, and then there was a compilation put out. But then after Ducks Deluxe, then you and Brinsley, Bob Andrews, you guys joined Graham Parker and the Rumour, one of my favorite bands of all time.
Well, we actually started Graham.
You started
We didn't start Graham Parker. We started the Rumour. Now, there's a whole varying degrees of memory involved in this thing again. There's a book just recently come out called Graham Parker's Howling Wind.
Oh, okay.
Do you know this book?
I don't, but I need to get it.
Hang on. Let me just grab a copy here. It's called Graham Parker and Howling Wind, and it's written by a guy called Jay Nachman, Nachman, and he interviewed Graham and several other of the Rumour extensively. We would get emails with a list of questions and stuff. And what's interesting is the diversity of the various members of the band memories about how things happened and in what order and at what time. Some people with completely opposing memories of events and how we met each other. I mean, obviously, I knew Brinsley and Bob, and when Ducks Deluxe broke up, Brinsley Schwarz had already broken up. In fact, Brinsley came and played with Ducks Deluxe in the very last couple of months of Ducks Deluxe's life. And then me and Brinsley were kind of fairly clear that we wanted to do something together. And then it turns out Bob was looking to do something as well. And then we met through Dave Robinson, who, along with me, was living at the Hope and Anchor, this pub in London. And Dave had a little demo studio in this pub on the first floor of the pub. And Graham came in to make some demos. And that's how the Rumour. We also met Steve and Andrew through Dave Robinson and this little demo studio. And Steve and Andrew were a ready-made rhythm section, and they were great. They were a couple of years younger than me and Brinsley and Bob, but all the better for it. And that's kind of how the Rumour and Graham ended up. The thought was, Graham is this kid from outside London with a handful of songs that are really good and wants to do something with them, but doesn't know what to do. And the group of people that became the Rumour were a load of musicians who'd already played in bands and were looking to do something new, but didn't know quite how to go about it. So it's like 1 and 1 plus 2. 1 and 1 equals 2. Let's put Graham Parker together with these group of people and see what happens. And that's kind of how that came about. Machinations from Dave Robinson. He saw the possibilities, and that's kind of how it happened. This was in 1975. This would have been all of this getting together, rehearsing, meeting each other, yeah.
I'm remembering now that Brinsley corrected me on that too, because I think I talked about Graham Parker and the Rumour, and he reminded me, like, no, the Rumour was first, and then Graham came along.
Yeah, but I mean, yes, he's right. He's right, of course, but some of his memories don't chime with some of mine. So it's really, there is no absolute truth about this. It's just you pick it apart. But you should have a read of that book, because that's got the whole backstory in it.
Yeah, I definitely want to read that.
And he did a lot of digging and a lot of sorting out between one person's version of how things happened as opposed to another person's version.
Right. Well, you mentioned Steve Goulding, and I was so sorry to see that Andrew Bodnar passed away recently. And of course, we lost Bob Andrews in 2025.
Yeah, we did indeed. We had had a great gig in London for Bob Andrews, in which Graham and various members of the Rumour and Nick Lowe all got together and played sets, and it was really good. And there's quite possibly going to be a film of that night coming out as well, because it was nice. Properly filmed and sound recorded. So that's to come. But that was really good. Yes, and then Andrew had been very ill for several years, but had outlasted his prognosis. But the cancer got him this year, so that's very sad.
Yes, yeah.
He was a lovely, lovely, lovely chap, Bob as well. But then we're in that time, us of this of our sort of age. We're in that time where the ranks are getting thinner.
Yes.
But there you go. We all have our favorite Graham Parker albums. I've always really loved Heat Treatment in particular. I love them all, but do you have any particular album from that time that's special to you? I like the first album, Howling Wind. I like Squeezing Out Sparks.
Oh yeah.
Because I like Squeezing Out Sparks because it's very much a guitar-y album.
Yes.
Squeezing Out Sparks is a kind of odd one out album amongst all those early albums, because it's got the least amount of keyboards and horns and everything else. It's very stripped down, and the songs are wonderful. That's the thing. The songs are great.
They really are.
All of Graham's songs are pretty good, one way or another. But Squeezing Out Sparks is definitely a bit special. I thought it had the best songs since the first album, Howling Wind. Heat Treatment is okay, but I've not got the happiest of memories from making that. So that tends to colour your judgment a bit.
Were there problems with the label, like Mercury?
No, not at that point. No, the problems with Mercury came later, but at that point it was the manner in which it was produced that I didn't enjoy. It was a different producer to the first album. The first album was produced by Nick Lowe.
That's right.
The second album was produced by Heat Treatment, was produced by Mutt Lange.
Oh, right. Right.
And their methods of working were very, very different. And I much preferred doing it with Nick.
Well, I was happy with the result.
Yeah. Well, the result is fine, but it's just why it's not my favorite album.
Sure, that's interesting to hear.
These things, they're irrelevant to the listener, but if you were involved in it, it colors your judgment a bit.
Yes.
Or it colors your retrospective listening to that album.
Right.
The songs on it are great. Nothing wrong with the songs at all.
Well, I'd love to talk about your album, The Guest List, and what a great lineup of guests appeared on it. It's a great album.
Oh, thank you. That's jumping forwards in time.
Yeah.
I recorded that around 2007, 2008. I'd done an album previously back in the 90s. I did an album called Big Guitar, which was mostly instrumentals. And I figured when, 10 years later, whatever it was, I fancied doing another album. And I started writing some more instrumentals. I thought that's what I was going to do. And I'd already recorded a couple. But Dave Robinson said to me, he said, you know what you should do? He said, you should get a whole lot of the people that you've played guitar for, singers, and get each one to sing a track. And I thought, they're not going to want to do that. But much to my surprise, most of them were. A couple of people weren't able to contribute because of commitments or whatever. But I got most of the people that I've worked with over the years. So it was very enjoyable. And I also liked the fact that it was all covers as well, because a lot of the singers are also songwriters. But I figured rather than have a lot of original songs, I think it would be good for this album to be covers of things that either the singer or I fancied doing. And that's how it worked out.
Yeah, it's really nice. I met Carlene Carter at a house concert years ago and talked to her for a bit.
Oh, yeah.
She was really sweet. And you've also appeared on Carlene's albums.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, and I was in Carlene's band for a couple of years.
That's right.
The early 80s. And the Rumour, in fact, backed Carlene on her very first album, which was in 77, 78, I think. But it was the Rumour without me, because I was in America with Nick.
Oh, right.
With Nick Lowe.
The cowboy outfit?
No. It wasn't. He didn't have a band at that point. It was pre-Rock Pile. It was just his first album to come out. And he went to play at the CBS convention, and he played with me and Elvis and the Attractions backing him.
Nice.
So that was kind of cool, yeah.
And of course, Nick Lowe joined you on your album on the song A Man in Love.
On the big guitar, yeah, A Man in Love, yeah. And yeah, he did that, and it was great. And Graham was on it, Carlene.
And your old bandmate from Deluxe, Sean Tyler, he's on it?
Yeah, Sean was on it. And various other people that I've worked with who you probably don't know the names of, but local people in England, and Geraint Watkins. Do you know who that is?
I don't.
He's a wonderful keyboard player, singer, songwriter who's played with all sorts of people. He's played on Graham's last couple of albums that I've played on as well, and has played with all sorts of people. He was on a Paul McCartney album, so he's right up there with the best. He's a unique keyboard player. And he sings on the guest list album. He sings a song called "Island of Dreams," which was a hit song in about 1962, 63 for a group called the Springfields, which was Dusty Springfield and her brother.
Right.
Before Dusty became a solo star, and they did this track that I always loved, and it turned out Geraint always loved it as well, so he was up for singing it, and it is a cracker. It's a great one.
2, 3. Like a man in love, I'm walking around trying to figure out why you put me down. I've traveled over mountains, valleys too, trying to find a way to get to you. Everyone says you're just a flirt, but I know you love to see me hurt. There's no more glow in the moon above to shine down on a man in love. and you're blue, call me up and I'll come to you. I won't come running, I'll be flying, I'll be laughing and I won't be crying.
Wasn't it around the same time that the guest list came out that Deluxe reunited for some shows?
We did. We reunited, and we got paid to do a gig in London, a reunion gig in 2007, and it seemed like, well, we could do a bit more. And we did a gig in Paris, and then we had a residency. We did 4 nights in Monaco, Monte Carlo. And so these things kept cropping up. And then we keep getting these tours of Sweden. There was a market for various parts of Europe. There was a certain appetite for a reformed, aging Deluxe. But it was only me and Sean from the original bands.
Right.
It was, the bass and drums were more recent recruits, and we recorded quite a bit of stuff as well. We recorded, we've done several recordings at that time, which are all released on little independent labels. It was no more RCA or anything like that. But it's good. We did get in fact, I think we were probably together for longer in the reunited version than we were in the original version. Because the original version was only 3 years, I think, 72 to 75, whereas this one ran from 2007 to 2014, I think.
Yeah, it's a nice run.
But that's doing a lot less gigs than we used to. That was like a few gigs a year.
Right.
Which goes with the age of the people.
Well, I've heard talk of a documentary about the Rumour. Is that just a rumor, or is there any word on that?
No, it's been out for many years.
Oh, it has been out. Oh,
yeah.
Okay, I think I'm going to have to gloss over that one.
Not terribly well publicized.
Okay.
It's called "Don't Ask Me Questions."
Oh, okay. Yes, that's been on my radar for a while.
The Gramaglia brothers.
Right.
The Gramaglia brothers made it, who are the people that made End of the Century, which was the Ramones documentary. It's got all sorts of people in it talking about Graham Parker and the Rumour. Bruce Springsteen's in it, all sorts of folks. But it was not terribly well distributed, I don't think. Yeah. I've got a DVD of it here, but it doesn't seem to have been on any streaming platforms or anything.
So I need to get the Howlin' Wind book, and I need to get the Rumour documentary. Don't Ask Me Questions.
Yeah, I think you can probably find it easier in America than you can here. Online somewhere, streaming or hard disk, I don't know. But I'm sure it can be found in America. Don't Ask Me Questions. Michael Gramaglia directed story of Graham Parker. It's good. It's very good. It's very well put together. And it's quite comprehensive as well. It covers all the reunion stuff as well as all the early days. And us making the film in Hollywood as well with Judd Apatow.
Judd Apatow, that's right. This Is 40 was interesting to see Graham be very much a part of the storyline in that movie, not just in the background. But
yeah, playing a version of himself.
Yes.
a cinematic version of himself.
Right.
And we got flown to Hollywood, man. Fantastic, first class. We got flown out there, to be on the film for about a minute. It was great. It was really good.
Well, I'm glad that was a good experience.
All that came about at the same time as the reunion. It was all serendipitous. The fact that we were able to get a second go on the merry-go-round, as it were,
That's great. I really enjoyed the film, and I enjoyed seeing you guys. That was great.
Yeah.
Well, Martin Belmont, I can't believe I had this opportunity to talk with you. You've been a guitar hero of mine for many years now, so thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you. That's very nice of you. I appreciate that. And it's been a pleasure.
Mine too. Thank you, Martin.
All right. It was good to speak to you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Skips a beat, I vibrate from my head to my feet. You look so tame, but you set my heart aflame. Every time I'm with you, well, it drives me insane. You got a cute way of moving.
I Vibrate, one of the many fine tracks on Martin Belmont's The Guest List, a record that features guest vocals by Nick Lowe, Carlene Carter, Paul Carrick, Graham Parker, and more. Thanks for listening to Frets with DJ Faye. Don't forget, you can subscribe for free at YouTube, where you'll find extras including videos and YouTube shorts. Tell a friend about Frets, write a review, and stay tuned.
And you squeeze it and then my knees get weak, my head's in a spin. I look at you